Today we light the fourth candle on the Advent wreath, the love candle. Love is what the way of Jesus is all about. The call to love God, our neighbor, ourselves, and yes, even our enemies is the doorway to the full and free life in which Jesus invites our participation. Love drives out fear. Love never fails. In the words of the Kentucky poet Wendell Berry, love is what carries you, for it is always there, even in the dark or most in the dark.
We're Robert and Lori. We welcome you to Grace Point. We want you to know that wherever you are in the world, whether you're in person or online, whoever you are, however you exist, whoever you love, you are welcomed, affirmed, and celebrated here. Welcome home to Grace Point. Merry Christmas!
Yay, Grace Point. You're here, you're with us. We love you. Thank you for being with us. Will you stand with us? Let's all sing this first song together.
There's a space in every beating heart. There's a longing that reaches past the stars. There's an answer to every question mark. There's a name. There's a hope flowing through these veins. There's a voice that echoes through the pain. There's an ember ready for the flame. There's a name. Triumphs over fear. There's a laughter that wipes away all tears. There's a presence changes atmospheres. There's a name.
Let's sing it together. We will fix our eyes.
We will fix our eyes on the one who overcame.
Oh, yes, we will.
We will stand in awe of the one who breaks the chains. Love has a name. Love has a name. Jesus. Love has a name. Love has a name. Jesus. The name that's lifted up forever. The name that shakes the earth and shakes the heavens.
Amen. Thank you so much for being with us. Don't sit down just yet. We want you to take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself to someone, say hey to somebody, do the high fives, air fives, hugs, air hugs, all that stuff. And we'll be back in just a minute. Beating threes.
All right, well, good morning. Welcome, welcome. I'm Murphy Gill, he, him, his. My wife Michelle and I have been here at Grace Point now for a little over 3 years. Wanted to bring a couple of announcements to you guys. Let's see. First off, I want to welcome the online community. You guys are awesome. I can't wait for the day when we can actually see you guys, like in some weird way, be able to be in the same room and actually hug your neck, because I look forward to that someday. So, all right, next thing, volunteers. We need volunteers. As any great organization, you need folks, any great church organization like this, we need folks that can help and get out there and move things and do things. We also need band and vocalists and band people up here. So here's how you do that. If you're interested in that, on your table you should find like a card with a QR code. That's your kind of your key for just about any of those things. So you can go on there, you scan the QR, go to that thing, that site, and band volunteer form button. You can click that. We have lots of other things as well to do. I mean, like if people who love you tell you not to sing, that's the other button for you then at that point, okay? Just saying. So you can click on the button that says General Volunteer. And there's lots of other things that we would love for you to check out and help us out with. The holiday schedule coming up. So mark your calendars. Christmas Eve service here at 4 o'clock on the 24th. Be virtual services the next Sunday and the next Sunday. So the 26th and the 2nd will be all virtual. So don't show up here, or you might, if several of you do, you can have a little service outside. That'd be fine. So, but Christmas Eve this Friday is our last in-person service of 2021. Reconstruct is on pause until January. It's going to return on Wednesday the 12th at 6:30 p.m. As Reimagine. Isn't that interesting? That's a little bit of a teaser there, intriguing. So who knows what that's going to look like. All right, YAM, Young Adult Meetup, is back next month. This group is a chance for people ages 20 to 35. I'm still a little bitter about that. But if you're in 20 to 35 years old at Grace Point, to meet, make friends, and talk about the issues most important to you at this stage of your life. Mark your calendars. First meeting of 2022 is Thursday, January 20th, 6:30 to 8:30 at Disc Insider. We'll now meet at the first and third Thursday of each month. So tap the Young Adult Meetup button when you check on your little QR code there. You can find all the information there. Care group updates. So we're going to begin care groups again. So after 2 successful community gatherings, we're eager to start care groups up again and want to do it as safely as possible. So this week, we created a survey to indicate care group interest as we prepare for 2022. If you're willing to host a group or you want to be part of a care group, take 1 minute to fill out the survey that's on there so that we can successfully launch in-person groups early next year. Tap on the care group survey button when you go to the QR code and find that survey. All right, our fourth quarter InReach project is a nonprofit organization called Love on Wheels. We've talked about it all along, but it's a great thing. It works specifically to provide foster children with suitcases full of basic necessities and comfort items, blankets, books, and love notes. If you want to learn more about how you can get involved through item donations, blankets, and love notes, tap the InReach button on there. All donations and blankets really are due by Christmas Eve service, so this Friday at 4 o'clock. So it always helps me to have a deadline. So thank you, of course, for your continued financial support. This absolutely could not happen without your being consistent and faithful in your giving as much as you possibly can. We try not to be pressure-filled, but the fact of the matter is we just simply have to have a certain amount of finances to do anything effective in our community. And what Grace Point does in this community is absolutely essential. Would you agree? Absolutely. So, all right, there are multiple ways to do that. You can text Grace Point with an E to 77977. You can go to the website gracepoint.net/give. Use the QR code on your table and find that information. Use the giving boxes, which we have out at it says they're located at both exits. There's the giving boxes if you want to put actual cash money or checks or something like that in there. Old school, you can mail a check in. The address, is that on there? It's not on there. So if you want to mail it, here's your chance to write it down. P.O. Box 90160. 90160, and that's zip code 37209. So, and also for year-end giving, that kind of thing, for your tax purposes, all of that needs to be postmarked by 12/31. Online giving by 12/31. If you are going to give a gift of stocks or something like that, it needs to be initiated by the 22nd of this month. So, I think that's the end of all of our announcements. So, thank you very much.
glad to have you here.
And may this Christmas moment last forever.
Let the world stand still, the church bells ring, silent night as the angels sing. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Let the magic warm the moonlit air. Hear the choir join in, singing everywhere. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah,
Hello, Grace Point. Can we thank our band? It is so good to see you. Can you believe that it is the last Sunday of Advent? It's our last Sunday gathering of 2021. Of course, we have Christmas Eve coming up, which we're excited about. So it'll be our last Sunday for our youth of 2021 in person. So if you're in the 6th to 12th grade, you're free to go to the youth room just down that hall there. And it's our last Sunday. Well, actually, it's not. We have one more coming up next week. But it's our last in-person Sunday of Have Yourself a Merry Little Deconstructing Christmas. I hope this series has been somewhat helpful for you. As I've said the entire time, my goal was not to ruin Christmas for you. I think that's already happened. And my goal has been to give Christmas some actual context. Because I loved Christmas. I loved it. And then I felt like it was taken from me because I was essentially told that the questions I had or the things I would be like, that just doesn't make sense. And are we supposed to take that literally? Like, all of that wasn't welcome in the Christmas story. But what I found out is it actually is. And so I hope this has been somewhat helpful in maybe giving you at least a different perspective, a different way to hold on to Christmas. Part of that has been just understanding that the Christmas story is a Jewish story. It is not a Christian story. Christians didn't reinvent the wheel when it comes to Jesus or any of the theology. Most of what we know of as Christian theology didn't exist until the 300s, and it completely missed the point of so much of the Jesus story. And if I get on that rant, that's all we'll do today. So I'm going to try to hold myself back a little bit. There'll be another time and place for that. So what I want to talk about today is this idea. In Christian theology, there's this term called the Incarnation. How many of you have heard that term before? Yeah, the Incarnation. Every time I hear it, I think about carnation, instant breakfast, because it has the word carnation in it, and I just can't help myself. But incarnation is this idea of God becoming human, God being in flesh, literally is what incarnation means, to be in flesh. And so I want to talk about that today. And we've mentioned there are two Christmas stories in the Bible, Matthew and Luke. Matthew wrote sometime in the 80s. Luke wrote maybe in the late 80s, maybe actually in the 90s. Some people date it even later than that. The Gospel of Mark, which is the earliest gospel in the 70s, just begins with Jesus' baptism. We meet Jesus as a fully grown adult who is baptized by a guy named John in the Jordan River. And in this experience, he has sort of this aha moment, this really powerful experience of the divine where he's told that he is the beloved son, that God is pleased with him. And then the other gospel, the one nobody really talks about at Christmas, is the gospel according to John. And John is a completely different animal altogether. John begins John's gospel not with a birth narrative, not with the beginning of the human Jesus. John begins John's story with something called the prologue, and it's often called the hymn to the word. And I remember being in college, late 90s, early 2000s, and essentially being told now when somebody comes up to you and says they've never read the Bible, or when you're doing that really gross thing where you're trying to convert them to your faith, always have them begin with the Gospel of John. That's where they should start. And of course, so, as a 20-year-old, what I would always tell people, like, where should I start in the Bible? You need to start with the Gospel of John, John chapter 1. I want to read that for you. Let me just read it for you. John 1, 1 through 5. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Clear? Y'all, this is what we were have them start here. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was with God in the beginning. Everything came into being through the Word, and without the Word, nothing came into being. What came into being through the Word was life, and the life was the light for all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness doesn't extinguish the light. No doubt it is exquisitely beautiful poetry. Not the place to start, people. Because what is your immediate question when you read that? Whoa, 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 whoa. There's a dude named Word? And this person named Word was with God? Like where? And this person also was God, so God was hanging out with God in some God place? It's slightly confusing. Now, in Greek, the word is the word logos, and the word logos can mean lots of things. It can mean a word, it can mean the act of speaking, it can mean something like, in Greek philosophy, it means like divine reason, it could mean that which orders the cosmos, that which, there's like a reason behind the cosmos. Things work in a specific sort of way, things function in a predictable way. And so it could mean all that. But I think we have to remember, again, John, even though John is a little different, John is a Jewish person writing a Jewish story. And so when John thinks of word, John is using a Greek word, but he's using a Hebrew mindset. And when John says, in the beginning was the Word, I think it's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to go way back to the beginning of the Bible. Because the Bible begins in the beginning. And what is the first thing God does in the act of creation in Genesis chapter 1? In the beginning, God said. God speaks. The creative act. Right? In the beginning, God speaks creation into existence. I think John is saying, go back there. The story I'm going to tell you is a story that is as old as creation. It's a story about something God has been up to from the very beginning. Right? John is not telling a story of a plan B, where everything fell apart and now God's going to try something different with this human being named Jesus. I think John is saying, this divine human, incarnation, has always been the plan. It has always been God's goal. It has always been what God is up to. I love how John puts it later in John 1:14. The word, this idea, right, this creative energy became flesh and made his home among us. I really love how Eugene Peterson translates it in the Message, and we'll throw it up there. The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. Isn't that great? And actually the language, in the original language here, has the idea of setting up camp. Like the Word, this creative, dynamic force, took on flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. I think one of the problems with our theology around Jesus has been that we've sort of, in Christian theology, created Jesus as an outsider. Right? He's somebody who comes from outside. It's like an invasion. He comes from the outside. He's not really one of us. He's one of us in the same way that Superman would be one of us, right? You think about Superman. Superman looks like us, but he can fly. And in Luke's story, so can Jesus at the end. Right? So it's sort of like we have this Superman, this outsider, this person who isn't like us, who looks sort of like us but has x-ray vision, who looks sort of like us but has the ability to free stuff with his breath, who looks sort of like us but can walk on water, who looks sort of like us but has power over the wind and the waves, who looks sort of like us but doesn't really get what it's like to be us, right? That's sort of it's almost like one of the early heresies, and this is one I don't like. There are several early heresies I love. This one I don't like, which is sort of like Jesus appeared human. He was really divine, but he appeared human, sort of just to pull us in. I think the opposite is actually the truth. Jesus was human. And in the human life of Jesus, the people who knew him and followed him felt something of the divine in him. But I would argue, and I'm just going to this is supposed to happen at the end of the sermon, but I'm excited about it. I would argue that actually it's something that is in each and every one of us. I don't think Jesus comes as an outsider saying, hey, you all can never do this. I think Jesus comes as one of us saying, let's discover what is possible within humanity. What if we came to realize that the human is where we actually meet the divine? And I think that's what happened for the early Christians. They actually weren't Christians, for the early Jesus followers. I think that Jesus blurred the lines between the human and the divine for them. So that later in the Gospel of John, you have Jesus saying things like, if you've seen me, you've seen God. And you have the John community saying things like, on Jesus' lips, like, what you've seen me do, you'll do greater things then. Jesus doesn't come to us as an outsider. John knew Jesus' biography, I'm sure. He knew that Jesus was from Nazareth. He knew that Jesus had an origin point. He knew about Jesus' life. And yet he chooses to say, if you want to understand the story of Jesus and the story of where Jesus is inviting humanity to go, you have to go back to the beginning, to this idea that the creative power and potential of the universe can be embodied, can be enfleshed. And so let's begin with this. I think the story of the Incarnation is an invitation to find divinity within humanity. And that is not a Christian invention. That is not a Christian doctrine. You're like, whoa, yeah, it is. No. Genesis chapter 1. God makes human beings in whose likeness? God's. God creates human beings. And if you understand sort of the poetry of Genesis 1, God is creating earth as a temple. And in the ancient world, when you made a temple for a deity, what's the thing you would put in it to make it a function? You would put an image of the God in the temple to sort of represent the deity in the temple. What does God do in Genesis 1 in the temple? God says, I'm going to put an image of my likeness in this, but it's not going to be stone or wood. It is going to be flesh and blood, living, breathing, feeling. Look, it doesn't mean humans are perfect. When I talk about this, people are like, yeah, but look at the world. I live in it. I'm aware of what the world is like. It's full of all sorts of things. It's full of all sorts of pain and suffering, senseless tragedy. People who don't have enough food to eat, while in this country we have eating competitions. Right? We have unhoused people and shows about making our houses cooler. Right? It is a really messed up place. People hurt one another. People act violently. People gossip and slander. And yet it's also full of so much beauty. Fun fact, every good thing that has ever happened in human history came out of humans. Do you ever think about that? When you think about what humans are capable of, in our community that my family lives in, we've seen utter destruction in the last couple of weeks, and we've also seen the absolute best of humanity responding to utter destruction. And here's my theory. I do not think the problem is that we're human. That's where people begin. Well, when we mess up, when we make a mistake, when we fumble the snap, whatever, when we mess it all up, what is our go-to? Well, I'm only, which means if you expected more, your bar was too high. But what if that's not the problem? What if the chief problem we have is that when we do terrible things to one another, that we're not being human, we're living beneath our humanity? What if the problem isn't humanity? What if the problem is all the ways we end up living in dehumanized, inhuman ways with one another? When one person hurts another person, that's not humanity. That's subhumanity. And I think the Jesus story, the story of the Incarnation, invites us to see that since day one, the whole point has been that you will find divinity within humanity. You will find the image of the divine in the divine image bearers. And that's you, and that's me, and that's your weird uncle, and that's that enemy you have, and that's every single human being. And sometimes we live and we're just not aware of it. We're just not aware of it. And so I think actually part of our Christian message should be calling people not away from their humanity to some sort of disembodied somewhere else. We should be calling people back into their bodies, back into their full humanity. We should be saying, the problem isn't that you're living out of your full humanity. The problem is we're not living out of our full humanity. And that from the very beginning, yes, we have room to grow. Yes, we have things to learn. I learn new things all the time. I find opportunities to grow and change and become a better human being all the time. Ask the people who know me best. Sometimes they help point those out for me. Of course. But it's like saying to a kid who's just been born, why are you not acting like an adult? They have to grow up. They have to grow up. And we're all in the process of growing up. I don't care how old you are, you're in the process of growing up. One of my biggest problems with sort of Christian theology around the afterlife, around hell, has always been like, let's say you get 100 years, 100 wonderful years. On the scale of it, like the universe, that's like a blip. And you're supposed to figure it all out in 100 years? Come on. We're all in the process of growing up. And I think the Incarnation says to us, if you're looking for the divine, look no farther than the human. And I think it's also saying that God isn't an external being to be appeased. When we talk about God, where do we often talk about God? God up there, God out there. God is somewhere else. And we've got to keep God happy and get God close. I think the Incarnation says that God isn't a being out there somewhere to be appeased, but God is a permeating presence to be experienced and with which we're invited to participate. I think what the Incarnation is saying, open your eyes and look all around you. There's God. Now join God. Join God in the ongoing creation and transformation of the world God made and put you in. I was having a conversation with one of my kids the other day, and she asked me, where is God? And so I was trying to rack my brain. How do I say this? Because she said, God's up there, right? It's like, no, God's not up there. She said, well, God doesn't exist. It's like, well, okay, there has to be a middle ground there somewhere in trying to explain this. I said, well, God is all around us. God is like air, and we breathe air and we don't see. She's like, no, I don't know. It's like, okay. What about fish? I said, what about fish? Well, fish are in water all the time. And they're not aware they're in water. It's just all around them all the time. And that's how God is. Like, God's the water, we're the fish. And then she said the most interesting thing. How do we see God? How do we see God? And I'm sure she's wondering, like, is there certain kind of glasses we put on? You know, like you go to a 3D movie and boom, you see 3D. And the only thing I could think to say to her is, like, actually, love is how we see God. It's when human beings love one another. That's when you see God. That's what God is like. God is like the love we share. God is the love that bonds us to one another. Whether it's love between family, love between friends, or love between a person and their enemy, that is where we see God most present. I think the reason people looked at the death of Jesus and saw the divine is because of Jesus' compassion for even his killers. In Mark's gospel, that's the thing that gets the Roman centurion who helped put Jesus to death to go, that's the Son of God. Right? The way he gives himself away fully in love. That's what God looks like. If you want to find the divine, if you want to have eyes to see it, look all around you. This room right now is full of God. Full of God. And part of the calling of our tradition is to wake people up to the divine within them. God isn't somewhere else. God isn't out there, distant, disconnected, away from you, angry at you, occasionally popping in to do cool tricks, but then inexplicably staying away when help would be helpful. Right? I mean, that's not how this works. God is all around you. Take a deep breath. God in you, God through you, God with you. Now, I think that's what happened. I think the Jesus experience revealed to his followers and the people that knew him best, and then they revealed it to those they came in contact with, that God isn't somewhere else. God doesn't have to be conjured up. It's simply about developing eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts that are open. I think the story of our incarnation is a radical affirmation that to be human is a really, really, really good thing. you ever heard the saying, the medium is the message? You ever heard that? Which is a way of saying, like, how you choose to share a message, the medium you use actually transforms the message in a way, right? And the medium becomes so bound to the message that it becomes the same thing. I think that's true in most cases. And I think that's true in this idea of the incarnation. The medium becomes the message. God chooses which medium to just express God's message into the world. God chooses the human. How can that be bad? I know in lots and lots of places this Christmas, people are going to share a theology that Jesus had to come into the world because humans are so terrible. If humans are so terrible, God should have chosen something else, like a giraffe. Giraffes aren't terrible. You show me a talking giraffe, people will listen. Right? God could have chosen a dog. God never could have chosen a cat. And let me tell you what happened. Can I just time out? Can I tell you what happened to me yesterday? So there's this cat that comes through our yard all the time, and my security camera catches it, and it just like is walking through like it owns the place. Not our cat. It was on our back porch drinking water out of our swimming pool yesterday. And so I thought, I have this thing against cats. It's Christmas. Let's make a truce. I open the back door. I get down and do the thing. And it does the cat thing where it comes near me and then walks away while looking at me. Like, I rule the world. Eventually, the cat comes over and I start to pet it. And it's going really well. And inexplicably, the cat turns around and bites my finger. That's why God would never choose cats. Back into the sermon. Just this idea that humans are so terrible, then why become one? Why choose to incarnate yourself through this thing that's so awful? I think the incarnation actually says the opposite. I think finding God in the person of Jesus and in everybody around you says that being human is actually a really beautiful and good thing. And yeah, again, we've got problems. But I think incarnation is a celebration of what is possible through a human life. It is possible that a human being can live their life in such a way that they give themselves away in love and compassion to other people. They don't just think about what they can get. They don't just hold on in greed, but they open their hands and extend it in love and compassion toward the people. I think that is actually possible. And I bet you've seen it. And I bet it's even come through you into the world. The incarnation is a celebration of what true humanity can do and be and accomplish. And for every dark thing we've seen over the past couple years, and for every person who's refused to do the right things during this pandemic, there have been scores of other people who have put themselves on the line to develop vaccines, to care for us when we're sick, to keep grocery store shelves stocked. There have been people who have done unbelievable things. Really beautiful, good, kind things. And when you see that, you're seeing a celebration of what is possible through the human beings. One of my favorite Christmas hymns is "O Holy Night." There's a beautiful line in there that at the coming of Jesus, the soul felt its worth. I bet some of you in this room have spent your entire lives being told you're unworthy. For one reason or another, you've been told. I bet some of you listening online right now have been told your entire lives you're unworthy. And you've gone to church and people have given their testimonies and they've said, I'm just so unworthy, but God, for some reason, loves me anyway. Like, isn't that if my kids ever said, we're terrible, but mom and dad love us anyway. Oh, you're not terrible. You're wonderful and a little, sometimes occasionally a little annoying, but mostly just wonderful. And I would hate for them to think that I just love them anyway. You're not unworthy. You're not terrible. You got some things to work on. We got some growing up to do. But every atom of who you are is worthy. And the incarnation celebrates your worth because the medium is the message. Because when God in Christian theology enters the world in the story of Jesus, God actually isn't entering the world in the story of Jesus. Jesus is showing us what's always been here, what's always been true. Richard Rohr says this: in Jesus' birth, God was already saying that it was good to be human, and God was on our side. I don't know if you need that today. God's on your side. God is on team you. God is for your flourishing. God is for your thriving. God is for you becoming everything you could possibly become during your time here as a human being. That is what God is for. God is not working against you. God is for you. And as we come to this final week of Advent and we think about love, I go back to the words I said to my daughter, which is, I think love is where we see God. Love is what incarnation looks like practically. When you're like, what is the practical application of this theology? It means that we all embrace the truth that we are all incarnating the divine, and we go into the world and begin to live as if that were true. And what does the divine do? The divine stands for the oppressed. The divine calls us to flourishing. The divine calls us to become fully and wonderfully and freely human. And here's the truth about love. We over-sentimentalize love a lot. And I love sentimentality, I do. But love also has an edge, doesn't it? You want to find love's edge? Say something about my kids that isn't how wonderful they are. You'll find edge. You want to find love's edge? It's when standing against systemic racism and injustice. That's what love demands us to do. You want to find love's edge? Find it when anyone anywhere is being marginalized, left out, and forgotten. Because love is fierce. And love is bold, and love is brave. Love does really hard things. And isn't it incredible? I mean, just think about this. We are capable of love. If the scriptures are right about this, that God is love, then every time we love, all we're doing is displaying the divine in the world. We're image bearers doing what image bearers are meant to do. God isn't somewhere else and you aren't unworthy. God is as close as your breath, as close as the person sitting right next to you. And my prayer is for us this Christmas that we will remember that our call is to go be and embody and incarnate that love in practical, really beautiful ways everywhere we go. Are you with me? Yeah. So each week here at Grace Point, we celebrate communion together, which is an ancient Christian ritual. And it's a way of reminding us in so many ways of what love looks like. Love looks like being broken open and poured out for others. Love looks like sharing a meal with others, sharing your resources, sharing your life, sharing love practically with other people. So if you didn't get elements on the way in, if you want to throw your hand up, I think we have some people who will bring that to you. Before we do our final song today, I want to invite you. We say this liturgy together every single week, and you all can come on back up if you're ready. We say this together every single week as a way of centering ourselves, as a way of calling ourselves to remember that ultimately this is not our table, that this is Jesus' table, and that everybody is invited to Jesus' table. So would you do me a favor? Would you stand as you're able with me, and let's read this together. Come to this table, you who have much faith and you who struggle with believing, you who have been here often and you who have come for the first time, you who are at peace and you who feel despair. We are all part of the human family, and there is a place for us here. Christ invites everyone to the table. May this bread and wine unite us all. You may celebrate.
I don't care if the house is packed or the strings of light are broken. I don't care if the gifts are wrapped or there's nothing here to open. Love is not a toy and no paper will conceal it. Love is simply joy that I'm home. I don't care if the carpet's stained or there's food upon our table. I don't care if it's gonna rain, our little room is warm and stable. Love is who we are, and We sing, ooh. Let love lead us. Love is Christmas. Why so scared that you'll mess it up when perfection keeps you haunted? All we need is your best, my love, that's all anyone ever wanted. Love is how we do, let no judgment overrule it. Love, I look to you and I sing. We sing, ooh. Let love lead us. Love is Christmas. Let love lead us. Love is Christmas.
And Grace Point friends, as we leave this place today, and these moments of seeking wholeness and movement toward true human flourishing, may the hope, may the love, may the joy, and may the peace which we celebrate in this season, may they each be yours in richly saturating abundance. Grace and peace to you this week. Amen.